have the 2025 season preview for the Sydney Swans coming your way. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. We've got another season preview for 2025 coming your way, and today is the Sydney Swans. And what we see them doing this year, I guess. We're going to be looking at their last year, their recent form, all their players, and what we can expect 2025 to look like for Sydney Swans in 2025. I said that really weird, but just ignore that. Let's run on. If you haven't been here before, hit that subscribe button. Like this video, comment down below where you think Sydney will finish this year. We've got season reviews for almost every club. There's a couple left to go. West Coast and Western Bulldogs will both be out in the coming few days, so stick around, see them. Go back, check all the other teams. Check out the podcast. It goes live twice every week. So check all that content out. We're all Aussie Rules everywhere. Without any further ado, though, let's jump into Sydney Swans 2025. So we start with how they finished last year, I guess, is the best starting point. They finished minor premiers. They went first on the ladder throughout the home and away season. They pretty much spent most of that home and away season on top. Only lost one game early season, which was against Richmond, the bottom of the ladder Tigers. So you kind of ignore that one. They got into some great form. They looked incredible for most of the season. They fell apart a little bit towards the end. With about 5-6 weeks to go, they started to lose a few games, including getting absolutely demolished by the Power in Adelaide in about round, I don't even know what round it was, 18, 19, somewhere around there. So they got smacked there, but they picked themselves back up. They made it to finals on top of the ladder. Went into a qualifying final. Looked like maybe losing that one against GWS. They're crosstown rivals, but picked themselves up in that last quarter and got over the line just. And then obviously went straight through to a prelim, which they managed to comfortably win, I would say, against Port Adelaide. Never really looked like losing it. Won it by about 30-odd points. And then followed that up into the grand final with one of them, well, probably their most disappointing result. Just a not a good performance. They never looked like winning when Brisbane just dismantled them from start to finish that day. Sydney just never looked like a chance at any point of that match. So a bit disappointing of a finish for them, no doubt about that. We'll have a look at their last 5 years. It's an interesting tale, this one. So 2020, they finished 16th on the ladder. They went 5-12. But they turned that right around in 2021. They went up to 6th on the ladder with 15 wins, 7 losses. Did lose in an elimination final at home, but still pretty good result from where they were the year before. 2022, they got an extra win, 16-6, finished 3rd on the ladder. Made it all the way through to a grand final against Geelong and absolutely got smacked. So 2 out of 3 years they've been smacked in a grand final, which is not great reading for a Sydney fan or player. For that matter, 2023, they dropped off a little bit. They finished 8th on the ladder, 12 wins, 10 losses and a draw. Did lose an elimination final. And then 2024, as we said, they finished minor premiers, made it to the grand final, but lost by about 60 points, or exactly 60 points, I think. So the last 4 years, they've lost in an elimination final, finished runners-up, lost in an elimination final, then runners-up. So going by that, lock them in to losing an elimination final in 2025. That's a little bit sarcastic, but at the same time, a little bit not. So that's basically Sydney's last 5 years, where we see them going. They're just, I don't know. We'll get into their list and then we'll discuss their 2025, I guess. So this is their playing list for 2025. These are their rankings based on my rankings at the end of last season. Only for games played last season, ignoring all previous form by position. So blue is in the top 10% of their position. Green is the top 50% of their position. Yellow is the bottom 50% of their position. Orange means that they've played AFL football before, but they didn't play last year. And then the red ones are players that haven't played AFL football yet. So we'll jump into it and have a look at what we see. Starting in the key defenders line, it's where we always start. Um, they're solid, no doubt about it. Both Tom McCartan and Lewis Melican in that green range, which is good news. You probably want at least two, but probably three in the green range. In all honesty, Aaron Francis probably not capable of getting there. I don't know. We'll see. William Edwards, Riak Andrew, and Patrick Snell haven't played before, but Tom McCann did play their scratch match the other day in the forward line, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes, whether they go with that or not. I guess we'll find out over the early part of the season. But Melican certainly is good enough, and some of their general defenders are quite tall. We'll jump into them now because that's probably where their backline. I mean, most of their field is their smaller players are typically their better players on their list. I don't think that's any massive revelation there. Nick Blakey, he was great off half-back last year. He defends well. He also runs the ball really well. He takes risks. He takes the game on, and it definitely benefits them. So he was ranked 10th last year as a general defender. Rampy, he's certainly had a great year last year as well. Florent, he was outstanding. Matt Roberts also just snuck into the top 50% of general defenders. Then Callum Mills did not. He missed most of the start of the season. He missed a fair chunk of the season, and then obviously also missed grand final. It's going to be interesting what they do with him because he was a midfielder, but their midfield is pretty bloody good, which we'll get to shortly. But their midfield is really good. So there's not really room for him there, I don't think, other than as a rotating player. So I don't know what they do with that, but if he plays general defender all year, his rating will be a lot better than 73. Is that where he's best? I don't know. Cunningham, he's solid. Patton as well. And then Bice and Laidler, I don't know if we'll see much of them. They're pretty stacked in that general defender line that I don't think we'll see too many outrageous things from them in the back line in terms of that position in 2025. Jumping onto their key forwards, this is probably the area where they need to improve the most. For a team that won so many games, kicked a lot of high scores, to not have one key forward in that elite range is probably one of their big downfalls. Joel Amati at times looked great in a game against Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. He kicked 9 goals and everything looked like it was coming up rosy. Other than that, he didn't do much for the rest of the season. He didn't do much in the grand final. He's probably the one that they're hoping will take that next step. If they could get 45, 50 goals out of him in a season, that would be hugely beneficial to them because last year they did rely a lot on their midfielders kicking goals and also their small forwards, but a lot of midfield goals through Heaney, Gould and Warner. And then it gets a grand final day and it just didn't work. So Amati is probably their key forward there that has the most potential to take that next step, I think. He kicked 6 goals in the scratch match the other day. He's definitely talented. I feel like we just need to see him take that next step. Logan McDonald and Hayden McLean, I don't know about those two. We'll see. That's probably where they are. I don't know. Maybe they will improve, but I think that's probably a fair representation of where they are. Hamling and Buller. I don't think we'll see too much of them throughout this year, but maybe Hamling at some point. General forwards, they're pretty deep in this area too, to be honest. Tom Papley, obviously one of the best small forwards that rotates through the midfield as well in the competition. He tackles hard, he pressures, he kicks goals, he gets under the skin of opposition and he does it well. So I have him as their best general forward. I don't think that's any stretch to say. Will Hayward showed some really good signs last year. He had a couple games where he kicked 4 goals. He kicked the first or second goal for Sydney in the grand final, second maybe, but then wasn't cited again after that. So a bit more consistency from him this year. Could see him rise up those ranks. Taylor Adams, he's a midfielder that kind of now has been pushed into the half-forward flank from his last season at Collingwood to his first season at Sydney last year. Just because of the two teams he was at had a massive amount of midfield depth, and he can't break his way into that midfield so much. He's again someone that plays half forward flank but rotates through midfield as well. So he had a good year, no doubt about it. Got injured and missed the final series, but I would expect to see him bounce back this year and play quite a lot of games and probably end up similarly ranked as he was last year. James Jordan had a good year last year for Sydney. Look for him to maybe improve again. He's certainly a handy player for them, no doubt about that. Sam Wicks, I think, has potential to improve into that green range as well, if he is given enough opportunity. Robbie Fox, probably about there. Cleary. Corey Warner, he played okay in the scratch match. He looks like he's probably going to improve into this year. They gave him a few chances last year and he didn't really do much with them. So I think maybe we see a little bit of improvement there this year. And then Bowman, Kirk, Hanley and Dottoli there for rookies in the general forward line. Now we jump into what is undoubtedly their best position on the field, and also maybe the best midfield in the competition. Certainly the best group of 3 midfielders, I think, in the competition in Isaac Heaney, Errol Gulden, Chad Warner. Heaney ended up ranked second as a midfielder last year. He spent a lot of the year ranked number 1. Bontempelli did snabble him though. He had an outstanding season. First season as a full-time midfield, and he absolutely blew it out of the water. Kicked a lot of goals, regularly high in the disposal count. He uses the ball well, he breaks games open, he's an absolute gun. His qualifying final and his prelim final were both outstanding. Grand final day, not so much. He obviously didn't play as much of it because apparently had an injured ankle or something. So he did miss a fair bit of that game, but he wasn't doing much even while he was out there. So, yeah, absolute gun, no doubt about it. And what we saw in the scratch match, I wouldn't expect to see much less from him this year. Errol Gulden, he's young. He's really young still, and an absolute gun. He gets a lot of touches. Once again, kicks goals. Always has been a wingman, running up and down that wing all day. And that's what he loves to do. He just runs and runs and runs. They have started to blend him into that centre bounce structure a bit. So maybe this year he spends more time in that inside mid role. He did it a bit last year, late last year, would go in for about 20% of CBAs, 20-30% at times. We saw a lot more of that in the scratch match. He was dominant in that game, so I would expect to see a massive year from him. A full year inside mid will be interesting to see how that works for him. But he's someone that certainly has the talent to be one of the best, if not the best midfielder in the competition in my eyes. So look out for a big season from Errol. Chad Warner, a lot of speculation that this is his last year at the Swans, that he'll be heading west to Fremantle or maybe West Coast at the end of this year. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. It'll also be interesting to see what happens with his brother and his future brothers. His 2 younger brothers that haven't been drafted. But look for another big year from him. He's someone that is very damaging when he has the ball. He gets forward really well. He uses it well. He had multiple games in a row where he was getting multiple goal assists as well as kicking goals as well. So he's huge. Look for another big year from him. Then the underrated factor in this Sydney midfield, Rowbottom. He's the defensive midfielder in this lineup. I won't say that he's not good offensively, but he's a really good tackler, good lockdown player. He's their one go-to to stop players in this midfield, because obviously the other three that I just mentioned, all attacking midfielders. Rowbottom, hard tackling, gets the job done week in, week out. He had an outstanding season last year. McInerney played his role, no doubt about it. Same with Jake Lloyd. They were both great. Braden Campbell actually had potential to move into the team a bit more this year as a half-forward flanker, maybe rotating through the midfield. We'll see, but his pre-season has looked good, so I kind of expect him to do a fair bit this year. Caleb Mitchell and Angus Sheldrick are the remaining two midfielders. I mean, it's hard to break into this midfield. There's no doubt about it. Jumping into the rucks, Brodie Grundy is their number one ruck. There's no doubt about it. He will be their number one ruck all year. Had a great season. Didn't have an outstanding season, but certainly had a great season. He had multiple games where he was in their best couple players. There were some games where he didn't really show up. A lot of talk about him, I guess, out of the grand final, going up against a backup ruckman for the whole day, and he didn't really take over the game. He was the best ruckman on the field, but he didn't take over the game. But I don't think that's fully on him. I don't think any of his midfielders did great on the day, which they all lost their matchups against the Brisbane midfielders, so it just didn't work out for him or for Sydney on grand final day last year. We jump now into their best 22. Did this a few weeks ago, so things may have changed a little bit, but this is how I saw it. Backline, Florence, Tom McCartan, Dean, Rampy. Half backline, Blakey, Melican and Callum Mills. I just can't find a spot for Callum Mills in that midfield at the moment, which is crazy to say because he is a very talented player. Midfield, Justin McInerney, James Rowbottom, and I've got Errol Goulden starting on the wing just because I think Rowbottom's really beneficial in that inside mid role as a defensive mid, and you can't really take Warner or Heaney out of the midfield. So at the moment, Goulden's starting on the wing, but he'll certainly play his a bit of time in that inside mid role. Half forward line, Taylor Adams, Logan McDonald and James Jordan. Full forward line of Tom Papley, Hayden McLean and Will Hayward. Interestingly, I didn't put Joel Amati on the field. Got him on the interchange, but he probably is better than both of McLean and McDonald, so actually probably would rotate Amati into that full forward spot now. And Hayden McLean starting on the bench or an emergency. Ruckline, Brodie Grundy, Chad Warner, Isaac Heaney. Obviously an insanely good line there. Interchange, Amati, as I said, probably rotate him with McLean. Lloyd, Wicks and Matt Roberts. Nothing too outrageous there, I don't think. I think everyone there kind of earns a spot. You look into the emergencies, Francis, Robbie Fox, Cunningham certainly will play games. Braden Campbell, as I said before, I expect to see play a fair bit of football this year and potentially improve quite a lot. So look out for him as a potential bolter into this best 22. Detoli, as a rookie, may get some games this year, so watch out for him. And Lad Hams as the backup ruckman, but won't be playing unless Grundy's not. So that's the Sydney best 22 or so, according to me. We now look at a little snippet of their schedule for 2025. They start the season in opening round against Hawthorn at the SCG. A massive game. Hockball 2.0 against the Sydney Swans. It should be a cracker. I think, from memory, I haven't looked this up. I should have probably. They only played once last year. It was at the MCG. It was about round 8 or 9, maybe round 8. Hawthorn had won a game by this point, but I think they'd only won one, which was the week before. They came into this one and got smacked by Sydney at the MCG. Sorry, never looked like being in the game. Sydney won it by 70 odd points in an absolute dismantling. So Hawthorn are a different team than they were then, though. So look for that to be an absolute cracking game. Their two buys are rounds 3 and 14. Gather round is going to be huge. Round 5, Adelaide Oval, Sydney v Collingwood. That's going to be a cracker. They played each other twice last year. Sydney got them both times. Beat them at the MCG by about 30 points in round 1, and then they met towards the end of the year, about round 2021, at the SCG, and it went right down to the wire, and Sydney just scraped over the line. So look for this to be a real big rivalry game. They've had some close contests over the last 3-4 years, so that should be a cracker. The teams that Sydney play twice in 2025 are Brisbane, Essendon, Fremantle, GWS, North Melbourne and Port Adelaide. So not the easiest schedule. When you look at that straight away, you see Brisbane, obviously the reigning premiers, grand final rematch. They get that twice, which makes sense. Then you got Port Adelaide, who finished top 4 throughout the home and away season and also made a prelim final. GWS also finished top 4. They're crosstown rivals. So they play 2 out of the 3 other top 4 teams. The only one they're missing is Geelong. And then the other team from finals that they play twice is Brisbane, who went on to win the Premiership from outside the top 4. And then their 2 teams that just missed finals are Fremantle, who most people expect to improve this year, and Essendon, who I don't think there was high hopes for them, but their pre-season's been pretty good, so watch out for that one as well. And then their bottom 3 team, I guess, that they play twice is North Melbourne, which is going to be an improving North Melbourne team. Luke Parker against his old team for the first time. It's going to be not going to be an easy schedule for them. There's no doubt about it. None of them are easy games, I don't think, on paper. I mean, there's no easy games in AFL this year. It's going to be a tough season for a lot of clubs, I think. Everyone's going to be fighting for every single win. So that's kind of a wrap-up on Sydney. Where do I see them? I just... Their midfield is so good that you can't write them off. But injuries to that midfield could really change things. Also, unless we see improvement from their tools at the back line and the forward line, I don't think they can win the Premiership. I could be completely wrong, but I think we need to see Joel Amati jump into the top 10 key forwards, and maybe either McDonald or McLean to also kick 30 plus goals this year. A little bit more from their key defenders. And look, they're all capable. I'm not going to write them off, but I just don't know if they can win it. That's my thoughts at the moment. Things could change. I certainly have them good enough for finals. Will they finish top 4? I genuinely don't know, because I feel like there's 12 teams fighting for 8 spots in the finals this year. There might even be 13 or 14, to be honest. It's going to be tight, and it will come down to percentage for a lot of teams and maybe 1 or 2 results. Like, teams will miss finals by one win and finish 12th on the ladder. Teams will probably miss finals because of percentage. It's going to be tight. The competition is as close, in my eyes, as it's ever been. So it won't be easy for them to bounce back and get a Premiership, but I wouldn't write them off. That's pretty much all I've got to say. Jump in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Where will Sydney finish in 2025? I thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button as well. Let's keep those numbers rising. I'll be back with more season previews. We've got West Coast and Western Bulldogs coming up over the next few days. Season preview podcast episode goes out tomorrow, if you're watching this when this video drops. So come back, check that out. We'll be back, as I said then. Thanks for tuning in. Catch us on the next one.